All right, welcome back to the Top Step and inside the EQC studio. Joining me right now on the San Seltzer interview, it is Seattle Times Adam Jude. Adam, how are we doing?
Ryan, what's up, man? Thanks for having me.
Oh, of course. Hey, listen, it was just days ago we were talking about how crazy this team has been in regards to, like I think it was after like the Tigers series. You're looking at this going, man, okay, now all of a sudden this team can't score runs. And then they go out against the Mets, like that weekend series. They finish up with Sunday Night Baseball. And they just have this series where like they just dominate, obviously, on starting pitching. You've seen that all year. But then all of a sudden you got offense again. This team, man, it's so hard to really sort of, pigeonhole into what they're going to be because I feel like series to series it changes every single week.
You're 100% spot on. Like, I'm just covering this team, and I can see the emotional swings from this fan base. Right? It's just one day they look like the best team in baseball. Like, oh my god, with this series or with this pitching staff, we can go win the World Series. And there's reason, and that's justifiable. But then the next series against the Tigers at home, they just lay a complete egg, and you're going, wait a minute, like, who are these guys? So you're right, week to week, day to day, game to game, you just don't know what you're going to get with this team. But it is really interesting here as we hit the middle of August, as the weather starts to turn. They're embarking on a big road trip here, a huge, a really important road trip, we know. But Julio's back. Maybe they found something, right? The top of that lineup with Victor Robles, Randy Arozarena. Maybe they can find some of that offensive consistency. They've been searching for that for years now. We know this.
Yeah.
With that starting staff, maybe they found some momentum here. You see it in basketball, you see it in football all the time. They're momentum sports. Maybe baseball is becoming that too, specifically for the Mariners. Once you kind of get rolling a little bit, get that energy at the top of the lineup, maybe we'll start to see some consistent production.
Hey, you're speaking of that, and speaking of Robles and Arozarena, you're in the clubhouse way more than me, and you're asking these guys questions. Do you feel like any of that kind of energy has been something that's rubbed off on Julio in regards to having guys around him that are very similar to him, or is it just something like I haven't really noticed it? Especially with the Arozarena coming in, just a couple of weeks ago, right before the trade deadline. Of those guys, like, do you see any kind of like? Spark in Julio's energy? I know he's been on the IL, but do you think that helps?
Yeah, that's going to be really interesting here these next couple of weeks as Julio, the Mariners hope, obviously hits his stride. He kind of finds his groove again coming off, almost 3 weeks missing now too. So, he wasn't on the last road trip in Chicago and Boston when they made the trade for Arozarena and brought Justin Turner in. It's going to be really interesting to see how he meshes not only in the clubhouse, but in the lineup too. And all indications are it's going to be really smooth. Arozarena and Julio have trained together in the off seasons down in Florida. They actually share a personal hitting coach, so they've been together a lot. And Arozarena, the first time we talked to him when he came in, was talking about Julio right away and how excited he was to play with Julio. They had already talked on the phone for a while, and Julio expressed, his excitement, of course. And I think when you bring that same energy, and as you said, you add Victor Robles and what he's doing at the top of the lineup. Just talking about monkeys and the energy and the crazy catches, all the stuff he's doing too. It's not just Julio now, right? It's not just Julio with the antics and the awesome energy. It's all three of those guys, and you add on what Cal Raleigh is doing, Justin Turner, his approach, Mitch Haniger continuing to come through the clutch. It's not just one guy. It's not just Julio that we're having to rely on.
Hey, you know what? You brought up something because I was referring to when we first started this segment. I said like. Week to week, it's been kind of agonizing because it's like, okay, they all of a sudden offensively got something going, and then it goes back to what we saw at the beginning of the year. But a couple of weeks ago, around the All-Star break, your name kind of came up in this, and you were asking some people about this too. And I'm sure you've talked about this to death, but it kind of got like washed over a little bit. The batter's eye angled, right, in center field at T-Mobile. Any significance there in regards to offense, being able to see pitching that you dug up from players that said, yeah, man, I can really notice it, or you know what, it has nothing to do with anything at T-Mobile Park?
It's a really interesting topic and something we're absolutely going to have to revisit, in the offseason and going forward. I know Jerry DePoto has talked about it a little bit, like, hey, they're going to look at everything, right? They got to figure this out. It's like I do Wordle every morning, right? And it's like the Mariners are on their sixth line of their Wordle puzzle, and they've only got 2 letters so far, right? When it comes to this offense, it's a riddle for them. It's a puzzle they have not been able to figure out. And it feels like to me when they go into this offseason, regardless of what happens over these final 6-7 weeks of the regular season, they've got to figure it out. They've got to make some changes, whether it's to their mindset, to their approach, or literally to the batter's eye out in center field at T-Mobile Park. Whether that's just the psychology of certain hitters coming in here and getting into their head. And frankly, Teoscar Hernandez is the one guy that's talked about that openly and brought that about. He really struggled. We saw that in 2023 here. Look at him, what he's doing at Dodger Stadium now for the Dodgers. He looks like the guy he always was in Toronto. He looks like one of the best outfielders in the National League. That's the guy the Mariners were hoping they were going to get in 2023. You just didn't see it at T-Mobile Park. And good for him for opening up a little bit, whether that's, he just didn't handle it properly or he let it get in his head. He specifically talked about how it's kind of angled. He felt like he was crooked. He moved all around the batter's box when he was with the Mariners. And again, people have pointed out, the batter's eye out in center field is angled. It goes from right field to kind of the bullpen, or the bullpen out there in center field too, the beer garden. And, maybe in the past when they first opened it at Safeco Field, they had, mini forest out there too. Not quite what you see at Coors Field in Denver, but they had the trees and the bushes. Maybe that's something they have to revisit, where you get more of a straight line and more of a natural batter's eye setting. Because again, everyone sees the ball different. Every hitter's different. Mateo said he tried everything. I talked to him, asked him a few questions at the All-Star game down in Texas, and he just said, man, I moved all around the batter's box. I tried everything I could think of. I just could never feel comfortable, could never feel squared up in the batter's box in Seattle. I asked Marcus Semien, who was a guy who obviously came up with the Oakland A's and played in Seattle, throughout his entire career. He said, no, it's never been a problem for me. I think he's a 300 hitter his career in Seattle. So again, I think it just kind of goes hitter to hitter, and maybe pitcher to pitcher too, depending on who you're seeing, the spin they bring. But again, to me, to your larger point, I do think it is something they're going to have to look at in this offseason, because this isn't just a one-off. It's not an aberration. This is like up and down 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years in a row now where this lineup has been so inconsistent.
But it was like that, because as soon as I heard that about the batter's eye, because I feel like everyone wants like some sort of explanation, right? Like here at T-Mobile Park, and you've heard it forever. Like they've even brought the walls in. Like, I remember going back, like Adrian Beltre, who he had great numbers, but better numbers. What's that?
Hall of Famer. I mean, his career, his 4-year career in Seattle, that's the outlier.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. And then, Richie Sexson, who just came here and just did nothing, like first year he was good, and then all of a sudden, and so on and so forth. And again, these are names I'm bringing back because I'm just trying to go a little deeper than the 7 years, whatever it was. But they didn't have the trees out there. I remember they had them in the early 2000s. I can't remember what year did they get rid of the trees?
That's a good question. I can't remember exactly. Somewhere right there in the middle of the 2000s.
Yeah. Because I remember my first year coming here in I was 07. There was no trees out there, but I feel like too, and everyone's very like quick for conspiracy theories and what have you. But I've been asking hitters ever since. I remember because you popped up on social, and I was listening to some of the comments and stuff like that. So I just asked any hitter I could think of, just text them, hey man, the angle. Now it's kind of it's easier to come up with an explanation, especially when you're not looking at it. It's been a couple years since you've been there, but the thing I got was like, when you step into the box at T-Mobile, everything just feels big. It feels like you have to absolutely crush a ball to get it out to left field. Whereas other places like, Houston, you look at that wall, you're like, oh man, I don't need that much. And we all know, like, you're doing anything athletic, like swinging a golf club, and you kind of, quote unquote, stay within yourself, you're going to crush the ball. And like, I suck at golf, and I try and hit it harder, and it just goes like, so you hear all these different things, man, but it is just something where like, here at T-Mobile, in regards to offense, like guys just shy away from it. It's crazy, or they come in, and the minute they get to the box, they're like, I'm just not going to hit here. I'm not going to go deep. It's crazy, and
it's hard enough to be a hitter this day in today's baseball as it is. You don't want to be stepping on the box thinking about anything like that. You just want to think, how am I going to hit this 100-mile-per-hour fastball? How am I going to hit this 3,400 RPM slider that's biting into the dirt? It's never been harder to be a major league hitter than it is in 2024.
Right.
You add on the fact that the Mariners have to play at the most pitcher-friendly park in all of the majors. Yeah, it adds a layer. So you see a guy like Mitch Garver, you see Jorge Polanco in the first half of the season. Teo last year is a perfect example too. We're just seeing guys after guys after guys come in. And whether it is the ballpark, whether it's, they're aging, whether they're past their prime, whatever the question is, there's no doubt the ballpark factor is real. And the Mariners need to figure out a way to kind of solve that riddle. Like I said, it feels like one of this offseason, they're going to have to shift. They're going to have to take a different approach to it, because what they've done the last handful of years just hasn't worked with the new acquisitions they brought in, particularly with the right-handed bats, right? To your point, like, it's just so hard to drive the ball out of left field. And it's just something that, as an organization, they're going to have to step back and look at their approach and their philosophy this offseason.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. And again, easier said than done, man. And especially too, it doesn't help when you got, I think it's got to be the first time they fired a coach mid-season for a long time, right? I can't remember anyone who was let go.
Yep.
Yeah, and he's the hitting. What was his title? The hitting coordinator, Brand Brown. And it's like
coordinator.
Hitting coordinator. Whatever it was. But you got to ask yourself, all right, Aaron Judge. Can Aaron Judge be capable, if he played here, to hit 45 to 50 home runs? And the answer is, I guess it's, no. Because he's a freak of nature. He's huge. He crushes balls with ease. It's like, if he was here full time, what would it be? Would Aaron Judge be hovering around the 30 mark? You know what I mean? It's crazy.
Is he hitting 62? Probably not. Is he still going to hit 50? Yeah, because he's Aaron freaking Judge. He's
I don't know.
big history, right? How many 6'7", 260-pound chiseled? I saw him in the All-Star game in the locker room, and it's sort of like, this guy's just chiseled, right? He's a great guy. That's what he is. So he might not be the best example, but again, there's guys that have come in here. Julio showed, in his career, you can come in here and hit, but to your point, Ryan, you can't step in the batter's box, have that in the back of your head. Like, oh my God, I've got to swing 10% harder here just to get it out. Like, you still have to go up with your same approach, same mentality. Just put a good swing on it and hope for the best. I think that's the best approach coming here.
Hey, speaking of coming here to Seattle, what about Sunday Night Baseball? Like, I feel like on Saturday, I was working the game on the Saturday, and everyone's like, "Oh, how cool is this tomorrow?" Like, Sunday Night Baseball. I was thinking to myself, well, it's like they're televising it nationally. We get national televised games, but it's took till 2004 for them to come back to Seattle. Like, I get it. We talked a little bit before he came on. I get it. The logistics of coming to Seattle. It's the furthest place away. Everything else. But you'd think to yourself, in all those years with an Ichiro in there, the Yankees playing or something, they'd rock up in Seattle, right? Like, I'm dying to know, and someone can help me out if you're watching this, who has the longest streak of no Sunday Night Baseballs beyond 20 years? Is there any other team that's had a longer streak?
It's got to be the Mariners, I would think. I can't recall the last time they've been to Oakland, for example, too, right? Teams like that.
Yeah, good point.
The Rockies, teams that have consistently been down, organizations that have been down for a long time. But 20 years, you would think, has to be right there as the longest ever.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Hey, were you surprised, speaking of the trade deadline, were you surprised the Mariners went out and got 3 players, and 3 significant players in Justin Turner, Rosarina, and Jimmy Garcia? Because, and again, to me, I was thinking to myself, all right, you could see the same. Luis Castillo a couple of years ago, but I felt like with Luis Castillo, they felt like they had a really good chance to extend him. So they're looking at this going, okay, good chance he's going to be here longer than what we think. Last year, they were kind of in it, but they kind of made these lateral moves in regards to Paul Sewald for Rojas. But were you surprised, man? I'm not going to lie. I was a little surprised that they went as hard as they did.
Yeah, no, they've been signaling, all season that they're all in here. And then once they built that lead over Houston and over the Rangers in the AL West, I think they could obviously see, it's obvious to everybody, this is the year. It's, speaking of long droughts, it's been since 2001 since the Mariners as an organization have won the division title, and they know it's time. They've got the pitching staff to get there. They have to solve this offense, and I think they went out and got the best piece of anyone in baseball. They got Randy Arozarena, and again, he's a guy, when you look down the stretch and you look at the acquisitions, the deals that they made, Randy Arozarena, Justin Turner, Jimmy Garcia, all 3 of those guys have significant postseason experience. They've all been in those big moments. And Randy Arozarena has been one of the best performers, in the history of baseball in the postseason. You think about 2020 and the way he flashed and burst onto the scene was incredible. I think he's got the 3rd highest OPS in postseason history with players over 100 at-bats. I mean, that's what he's made for, and he's talked about that. You look at his, he's got the shiny neon cleats every day. He's got the jewelry. He's got, which is really interesting because as we've gotten to know him just a little bit, it's only been a couple weeks, but He's really quiet. He really keeps himself in the locker room. That's not really his personality. The flash is kind of on the outside. The flash is the bat flips. The flash is in his play and the adventurous routes he takes out there in left field that keep you on the edge of your seat. But, that's his baseball, kind of personality. Behind the scenes, he's a really mellow guy. He's kind of really respected as a guy who puts the work in. And you talk to Luke Rayling, was teammates with him in Tampa. But to me, the Mariners made the biggest move at the trade deadline of any team. The biggest move anyone could make. Again, so much talk about the Blue Jays and what are they going to do with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. They were never going to trade him. Right. It was not going to happen. And obviously the Mariners, with their prospects, could have gone out and blown the Blue Jays away with an offer. But the Blue Jays, I don't think anything was going to move them. So, plan A, I think all along was a Rosarena. And I think he's exactly what this team needed. You plug him into the number 2 hole there. You get Cal and you get Julio hit behind him with Robles in front of him. The complexion of this lineup has changed dramatically.
Big time.
J.P. Crawford, if he can come back from that broken pinky in the next few weeks too, adds some stability there too. Got great on-base skills, and all of a sudden your lineup looks legitimate. It looks like a lineup in the postseason that can actually do some damage and make a run here. So kudos to the Mariners front office. This is what they knew they had to do, and for them to be able to go out and find those trade partners and execute these trades, I thought was, it was an A. It was an absolute A for what they were able to do.
I'm giving it an A too, and I said this even around the time, and I'm not, because they've all been really good. They've all made an impact. They, right away. Hey, I'm going to put you on the spot here though. You've got. Let's play hypotheticals. Let's say the rules where you can only make one trade. Now I'm going to throw Jimmy Garcia in this mix, Randy Arozarena, Justin Turner. I'm going to put Victor Robles in there. Now let's put Victor Robles to the production because he's been really good. I don't think we talk about how important he has been enough. Because I try and talk about him all the time. Now you've got let's do a hypothetical. Let's put Robles at the trade deadline, and the production let's say he's in a Washington Nationals uniform, but he's heating up because the numbers he put as soon as he came out. When did he come over in May? Was it May or June?
Early June, I believe.
Early June, and he just went off. So let's say he went off, but in a Nationals uniform. Who are you taking? Are you taking Justin Turner, a Rosarena, Robles, or Jimmy Garcia? You can only take one.
Yeah.
Who are you taking?
Tough question. I really think Victor Robles' energy as much as anything, and the stability, the timing of his resurgence here with Julio out for the past few weeks has been vital for this team to keep them afloat and headed the stretch here. Right in contention, tied with Houston. But I'm going to go with the Rosarena at the end of the day. Again, all the things we just talked about. His presence in the postseason, he's as dangerous as anyone. He's as confident as anyone.
Right.
We've seen Julio the past few years, the way he shuffles and shimmies in the box. And I love just Julio's presence when he gets in there. Randy is that same type of hitter, same type of athlete. When he steps in the box, like he's not intimidated by anyone or anything. You can see it right away. Like I said, he's got so much flash. But when it comes to the postseason, there's so much substance to back up that flash too. And I think that's really going to benefit everyone hitting in front of him and behind him. Cal Raleigh, Julio Rodriguez specifically, once they get in, if they're able to get in the postseason, even down the stretch, just because he shows up when the lights are brightest. Julio does too, but Arozarena is as good as anyone in baseball in those moments. And I think that's exactly what this team needed.
All right, I'm going to give you one more question here. I'm going to put you on the spot again. It's a one-game playoff for the Mariners to get into the postseason. Okay, you've got 5 starters who are just. And by the way, the rotation. I wish we had more time to talk about how amazing they've been and just consistent. That's the word I'm thinking of. And I can knock on wood here, but just injury-free. Look at the Dodgers having to deal with all that stuff. But you just take that for granted. Now, the 5 starters, you got a one-game playoff here. And by the way, you can chime in if you jump on social at the Top Step, Top Step TV. You can jump on at Twitter, Instagram, whatever. Okay, one-game playoff. Who's it going to be? You got Castillo, Logan Gilbert, Bryce Miller, George Kirby, Brian Wu. Who you got?
You can't go wrong with any of them, which is the luxury that the Mariners have here right now. And it's
but if they pitch bad, you're going to cop it from fans. They're going to be like, why didn't so-and-so pitch instead of him?
100%. It's really hard to not pick Luis Castillo. You think about what he did 2 years ago when the Mariners finally got back in, the way he shoved against the Blue Jays in that first start was as impressive as probably any postseason start over the last decade in Major League Baseball. George Kirby with his stuff, just his bravado, just his presence, his command is probably the best command in the history of baseball. Yeah. Think about that. Like, we're talking Greg Maddux and George Kirby. It's a very short list of guys who can put the ball precisely where they want to. All that said, I'm going Logan Gilbert with what he's been able to do this year. He's taken that step that George Kirby took last year. To me, it's going to be really fascinating here over the next month and a half. All these guys, yes, but I think Logan Gilbert is going to vault himself in the thick of that AL Cy Young discussion. I think he's got the stuff. I think he's got the makeup. I think he's got the confidence now to go out and do that. He had that hiccup a couple weeks ago at Fenway Park. It's Fenway Park, with one swing and any pitcher could look silly in that park. And it was one missed pitch by the umpire in that game, if you really want to go dissect it, that really kind of submarined Logan's start that game. I just think Logan's a totally different guy. I think he's as good as anyone in baseball this year, and I think we're going to see it here over the next 6-7 weeks. He's led Major League Baseball in innings pitched virtually the entire season. He's led Major League Baseball in whip virtually entire season, soft contact. He gets the punch outs when he needs them. He's got the nasty splitter. He adds in a curveball. He's got it all. To me, he's the guy who's vaulted himself into that discussion. And if you have to pick one guy to get you into the playoffs, to me, it's Logan Gilbert this year.
Oh, okay. That one game you mentioned in Boston is why I'm steering clear of Logan Gilbert. I know he sounds. By the way, and again, he's been on this show. He's my favorite guy on the team. Absolutely love watching him pitch. He's just been so dominant. Don't get me wrong. But he even said it too after the game. If you remember, he said, "Hey, look, it's on me. I should have been," even though they missed that one pitch, which they did, and I was super frustrated about it. But he's like, "Hey, it's on me. I'm going to make better pitches." I'm going George Kirby. He just like snuck up on us the last couple months. He's been so dominant, and he just has that ice in his veins, man. Anything you need command. You got all of a sudden a 3-1 count with a runner on second, and you're like, oh, should we pitch around this guy? And George is like, no, I'm just going to go on the black. You know what I'm saying? Like that big moment where you're going to get that one guy, get that extra out, and to stop that big inning that can completely sink you in a playoff game. I'm going George Kirby. And then I was even thinking maybe like a Brian Wu on a short leash or something, but no, I'm going straight George Kirby. But you can't go wrong, man, though, with any of them, really.
Yeah, I think it's a fascinating debate. And if you're the Mariners, your hope is a debate you can continue to have deep into September and deep into October, too. Who's your game one starter in maybe a potential championship series? Who's your game one starter in the World Series? And stuff you can dream on because they have been so good, so dominant. You just look across the board. They're number one in virtually everything across Major League Baseball, which is unprecedented. And to your point, the consistency with which they've done it. And now we're seeing, I'm writing about Brian Wu this week. It really feels like he's turned a corner as well.
Yes.
He's kind of realized, hey, I want to be part of this thing down the stretch. I know I'm capable. Finally has some confidence now. He's gone out and done it for a year plus now. And you know what? If your hamstring is bothering you a little bit, guess what? You can pitch through that a little bit. Yeah, if it's something legitimate, I get it. But he's realizing now too, you know what? I can push through this. I want to pitch for this team. I want to be part of this. And I'm capable of being right in the thick of it and as good as anyone because he really is.
You know, it's funny, the Brian Wu thing, how dominant he's been. Love watching him pitch, but just, and again, not that I'm like pointing fingers, I get it, but I'm just like, oh man, how do we get you over this hump where you're going 90 plus pitches every time out? Because I want to see what you're capable of doing when you're hitting 100 triple digits on the pitch count. And see, are we going 7-8 innings every time out because he's so efficient? But no, I'm with you, man. Like just the niggly little things, the hamstring, the elbow, is in between starts. He wasn't throwing bullpens, everything else. But it's good. I'm with you. I feel like he's finally sort of turned that corner. And I don't know, maybe he had a conversation with someone and they say, hey, look, man, like, let's do this. Like, it's about time. Let's make it happen. Let's just pitch through some of this stuff.
It's a fascinating, conversation going forward. He, obviously him and Bryce Miller came up together. They're good buddies. Brian's looking at Bryce Miller and what he's been able to do, the durability this year to take that next step. And I think Brian feels like he's just as good and just as capable. And I'm curious to see if we see that down the stretch here.
All right, Adam, listen, I'm going to put you on the spot. This is probably the most important part of this whole chat. we're going to do the How to Speak Australian segment. You want to stick around? How are you with Australian slang? You pretty good? Do you have any ties to Australia whatsoever?
None whatsoever. The closest is Jim. I watched Dumb and Dumber as a kid probably 1,000 times. So the worst, maybe most stereotypical accent is Jim Carrey and his attempts in Dumb and Dumber to try to make a terrible impression. So
all right, okay. So
because if you're gonna make me do this is brutal.
No, you don't have to do an accent. You don't have to do an accent, but I'm going to give you a word. You have to guess it right. I'm going to give you a sentence as well. Now, if you don't guess it right, I'm not going to give you the answer till later because I want people on social media to have a crack at it too. So this is how it works. This is the How to Speak Australian segment brought to you by the Kangaroo and Kiwi Pub. It's in Ballard. Great Aussie pub. We are going to do some Aussie trivia there in September. You're more than welcome to come and hang out with me and all my Aussie mates. But this is how it works. I'm going to give you a word, give you a sentence. Now, if you want to play along, go to at the Top Step TV on Twitter and Instagram, put it hashtag TTSmate, and you can win yourself some really cool prizes. Try and guess the word if Adam is unable to do it. The word this week, Adam, is hoon. It's spelled H-O-O-N. What do you got? What's a hoon?
Gosh, what's a
But judging by that reaction, you got no idea. I love it.
No idea. Hoon. Oh my gosh. It feels like something you can order at the pub. Give me a hoon. I'll take 2 hoons.
No. Well, maybe you've had a couple of these, but listen, before you go and act like this, but I'll give you a sentence. Hey, man, this might give it away. No, I'll give it. You might give it away here, but hey, slow down, you hoon.
Oh.
What do you got?
It's a little bit of a slang of like, come on, pal, or kind of like jerk or something like that.
Yes, it's not like you don't want to be a hoon, but I'm not going to give you the answer. I'll tell you when we get off the show here. But go and have a crack at it. Adam could not nail it. Get it at the Top Step TV. Put in hashtag TTS, mate. Tell me what a hoon is. H-O-O-N. That's brought to you by the Kangaroo and Kiwi. You're dying to know, aren't you? You're dying to know what that is. I might not. I just might not even tell you. I might not even tell you what it is.
Great.
Just to mess with you. No, I'm kidding. I will let you know. But Adam, this has been great, man. Hopefully you can come back on, especially once we get into September and we're diving into some good playoff talk down in this race as we're heading towards October. But Adam, I really, really appreciate you joining us for the CM1 Seltzer interview.
This has been fun. Thanks, Ryan.